Namaskar, I am Gaurav Bidve and you're watching to Boundaries and Beyond Lab. I work at the intersection of psychology and law where identity, power, and consequence quietly intersect. In the previous episodes of this channel, we explored something deeply human: how respect shapes relationships, how power silently alters behavior, how identity reacts when dignity is reduced. But those psychological patterns do not stay inside homes. They travel with us into offices, into institutions, and into courtrooms. Because law is not just a profession, law is a place where ideas collide and egos are tested. Which is why today we begin with something very important: a new conversation, a new direction. Boundaries and Beyond Lab Law Series, where we prepare something most law schools never explicitly prepare: the mind behind the law. Now, to be fair, law schools across the country do an extraordinary job teaching the structure of the law. They introduce students to constitutional principles, legal reasoning, moot courts, debates, and the discipline required to study the law seriously. But there is one dimension that often develops silently rather than formally: the psychological preparation required to function inside a profession built on disagreement. Every year in India, thousands of students choose law. Some enter after 12th into a 5-year program. Others arrive after graduation into a 3-year course. Many come with inspiration. Some imagine themselves arguing historic cases. Some imagine themselves wearing a black coat with pride. And there is nothing wrong with that. Law is one of the few professions that allows a person to influence the society itself. But what most students discover very quickly in law school is that the profession is far more demanding psychologically than they expected. In the beginning, many students approach law the way they approached in school or college: study the material, understand the concept, write the correct answer. But law slowly reveals that the profession does not always reward certainty, it rewards reasoning, which means the question is often not what is the correct answer, but the question becomes how well can you defend your interpretation. In the first few months of law school, something interesting happens. Students who were used to clear answers suddenly encounter something new. In law, there are multiple possible interpretations. Two intelligent people can read the same judgment and reach completely different conclusions. And suddenly, a student realizes this profession is not about memorizing information, it is about thinking under pressure. For some students, this is exciting. For others, it is unsettling because their confidence was built on always being correct. And law quietly teaches them something new: being corrected is part of the process. In fact, one of the healthiest experiences a law student can have early in their education is having an argument challenged. Because in the courtroom, your argument will always be challenged by the opposing counsel, by the judge, or sometimes even by your own client. So, learning to separate criticism of your argument from criticism of your identity is one of the most important psychological skills a future lawyer develops. In most professions, disagreement is uncomfortable. In law, disagreement is the process. Law is intellectual combat, but the battlefield is reasoning. Two lawyers can examine the same case and argue opposite conclusions. Both may be intelligent, both may be prepared, and yet one argument will ultimately prevail. This is why law feels intense, because it is not simply a profession of information, it is a profession of intellectual confrontation. Ideas are tested, arguments are challenged, reasoning is examined, voices may become firm, arguments may become sharp, but beneath that intensity lies a discipline. The discipline of testing ideas rigorously. Because the purpose of legal debate is not to defeat the other person, it is to refine the truth. And students must learn something very important. Your argument being rejected does not mean you are rejected. But emotionally, that distinction takes time to develop. So, what kind of mindset does law actually require? First, intellectual humility. You must accept that your reasoning will be challenged. Second, emotional stability. Arguments in law can be intense, but intensity does not mean hostility. Third, patience. Legal thinking develops slowly. Many first year students feel pressure to immediately sound like lawyers, to immediately understand complex judgment. But legal thinking rarely develops instantly. It develops gradually through reading, discussion, and sometimes confusion. And that confusion is not failure. It is often the beginning of deeper understanding. It is built through discussion, disagreement, and reflection. Students who understand this early adjust much faster to law school. Students who don't often feel unnecessarily discouraged. None of this should discourage you from choosing law. In fact, these challenges are exactly what make the profession meaningful. To defend rights, to question power, to stand between injustice and those who cannot defend themselves. Which is why the profession continues to attract people who care deeply about justice, fairness, and the structure of society itself. But to do that effectively, you must prepare more than your knowledge. You must prepare your mind. If you are considering law or guiding someone who is, begin preparing psychologically, even before you enter the law school. Because the students who thrive in law are not always the ones who memorize the most. They are the ones who think clearly under pressure. In the next episode of this series, we explore something every law student eventually experiences: how law school slowly begins to change the way you think. See you in the next episode. Thank you.